Hi everyone, my name is Marcin. I'm the Circulation and Reference Librarian here at the Clapp Memorial Library. I want to thank you for coming to the program tonight, and very quickly we are happy to welcome the Gravestone Girls to the library. They tell us not to be scared of these old cemeteries and that they can teach us a lot about our history. Whether you're interested in rubbing of old New England gravestones or purchasing replicas of castings, magnets, or other oddities, they are here to help. You can find them on Facebook, Instagram, or their website, gravestonegirls.com. This program is sponsored by the Friends of the Belchertown Public Library. So once again, I welcome you all, and please welcome Gravestone Girls.
What's up, kids? How's it going?
Good.
Excellent. Good to see you all. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. I'm going to do a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. I'm going to say you can all see that screen pretty good, right?
Right.
Yeah. And can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Yeah. My father says that's not a problem. Do me a favor, silence your cell phones, please. And also, you're going to find out really fast that I can talk about this all day. So hold your questions until the end, because if you get me off track in the middle of everything with a great question, wherever you all happen to be tomorrow, you're going to be late. So what we'll do is I will give you a ridiculous amount of information. I will forget to give you a ridiculous amount of information. And if there are burning questions at the end, we can take them in an open forum so everybody can participate. How does that sound?
Good.
Sound good? Excellent. So off we go. Welcome to the graveyard. This is a tour of cemetery art, history, and symbolism with the Gravestone Girls. There is indeed an S on the end of that. There is more than one Gravestone Girl. This is a picture of us in our natural habitat. That's me. I'm Brenda. Melissa is our web mistress, and seated is Maggie, my best friend since the age of way back when, 5. We'll just say 5. Yeah. So, really only a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So Maggie and I grew up in Central Mass. Melissa grew up out around here in Munson. And together and separately, we have been traversing the cemeteries and looking at tombstones for a very, very long time. Gravestone Girls' mission is to keep our dead alive by preserving cemetery art and history. Shameless self-promotion, gravestonegirls.com. Information, social media on Facebook and Instagram. I passed out some postcards with that information, all our contact stuff. If you didn't get one, I have some left. Feel free to come get one at the end of the program. Gravestone Girls do a bunch of different things. We do public programs like this, so we want to tell you about these spaces. We want to tell you why they look like they do and how they've changed over time. We lead cemetery walking tours, so we gather in the cemetery and take a walk across the landscape and talk about what we see, and again, why it looks like it does and how it's changed over time. I'm not going to talk about the next two. That's a whole nother program unto itself, but I want you to know that we do it. We teach proper tombstone cleaning and gravestone rubbing processes. It's not rocket science. You don't need a degree, but you do need to know what you're doing before you go out. That being said, I grew up in my family cemetery making gravestone rubbings from the time I was a little kid until well after I got out of higher education. And I got out of higher education with an art history and restoration degree. And I used that on the side to do something for myself, which is create gravestone replicas. Years go by, I've got all these pieces of paper because I've made gravestone rubbings. I've got 2 dimensions, I want 3 dimensions. So we developed a process that we can safely take into the cemetery, make an impression from the base of the stone. That allows us to capture the art and then bring it home and replicate it. And so Mag and I worked on that together, just on some of our favorite pieces. And the joke very quickly became, nothing says Merry Christmas or Happy Birthday like a gravestone. So we gave them as gifts, and people said, can you make me some to give to somebody else? So that was 30 years ago, and here I am today. These are our tombstone castings. are purely decorative. They hang on the wall. We make magnets and coasters and frames and mirrors. We've got a great new line of chocolate bars. They are elements of the larger stones. They are all to scale, and everybody comes with a history tag that tells you the name of the person, the name and location of the graveyard, plus information about the symbol. Because we feel the history is just as important as the art. All right, that's enough about how fabulous Gravestone Girls are. There'll be more, don't worry. Before we start tonight's virtual tour, we have to answer 2 questions about the origin and the evolution of the cemetery. So we need to know why we bury the dead and where do gravestones come from. So we bury the dead because we're mortal. We only have a certain amount of time while we're here, and when that time is up, the people that are left will dig a grave and put the body in the grave. Early on, that grave was covered with a pile of stones. Part of the origin of the word gravestone. So that pile of stones served a couple of really good purposes. Shows you where you put somebody when you want to go back, in case you want to go back and memorialize, go back and visit. It shows you where you put somebody, so when it's time to bury somebody else, you don't disturb the folks that are already there. And it served a very practical purpose of keeping the wild animals from getting into the dirt of that freshly turned grave and disturbing the occupant inside. The archaeological record, dating back 50,000 years and more, very often shows us that different people in different places at different times across the world believed there was something more after this, believed we went somewhere when this life was over. And we know that because when the archaeologists and the anthropologists start excavating, when they make finds, there are things like this, grave goods inside the grave. So this is a really simple grave. You can see my occupant hanging out in there. And he's got a couple of clay vessels. And maybe those vessels held food or oil or beads or herbs, or maybe even the vessels themselves. They were things that would be needed by this occupant in the next world. As these big pointy things, really just giant ancient gravestones, they mark the spot where Pharaoh is buried, and they contain wonderful things that Pharaoh needs in the next world. I can talk about 50,000 years worth of history, no problem. We don't have that kind of time. I'm going to get us right to the good stuff. We're going to take about a 400-year stroll through the 3 major eras of graveyard/cemetery evolution. So we use the term graveyard, burying ground, cemetery. We use those terms interchangeably today, but they have specific meanings at specific points in time, and I'm going to show you that tonight. So we're going to take a peek into the colonial period from first settlement through the 1700s. We're going to look inside the rural garden movement of the 19th century, and then we're also going to take a peek inside the cemeteries of the 20th and the 21st century. I've had the great pleasure to be invited to this library several times over the last maybe 10 or 15 years. I still can't get them to let me move into the building, but I'm working on it. And I have a lot of pictures from your cemeteries and your graveyards around town. So I created a program with as much local content as possible. So even if you've seen me present this program in the past, tonight will be different. It has been refreshed so that it keeps up with the things that are happening in cemetery and gravestone development, because you sometimes think once they're there, they never change. But also, the first time I came out here in preparation for a program, I took more than 400 photos. So I have plenty of stock to work with. One reminder, and I will do it again when we get to the modern section, because I've been in all your cemeteries taking pictures, I've been in your modern spaces as well. So when we get to the 20th and 21st century cemeteries, and you may see somebody you know show up on the screen. So I've tried to take names off of it, hide identities, and focus just on the symbols. But, if you know somebody's tombstone and what's on it, then even if it doesn't have a name attached to it, you might recognize it. And that can be very surprising in a public setting, so I just want to throw that out there. Don't freak out. I'm not using the modern stuff to say this is good or this is bad or anything like that. There's no judgment. I'm speaking about what I find on modern tombstones that says who we are and what we enjoyed while we were here. The same way I use the pictures of what I find on colonial tombstones and 19th century tombstones to represent what those people were at the time, who they were and what they were thinking about mortality. Belchertown incorporated 1761. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 cemeteries and burial grounds around town. So there they are in chronological order. You'll notice many of them have multiple names, and you will also notice that some of them have been moved from their prior locations to the Clapp Memorial Cemetery. Those guys went over in 1938. So field stones is gravestones. Also, when you look at my slides, you'll see something that says what we're talking about, and then if it's from town, it's going to have the name of the cemetery or cemeteries that I found it in. So we're looking here at rough stones, field stones as grave markers. It can be very easy to walk right by these and not know that they are stones. They may or may not have information on them. They might, if they do have anything, maybe they've got initials or name and a date, or very, very simple. They're used early on. They're used when there is no available tombstone provider. And also they're used early on just because we know who we're burying and we know where we put them. So this is a lot like that example I used about using tombstones early, gravestones or stones on top of graves that I mentioned earlier. So I want you to just know that they're out there. They don't have necessarily a particular time period. This has a very particular time period. This is a very standard colonial landscape for these are graveyards, they're burying grounds. They're not cemeteries yet. So graveyards that we associate with colonial period tombstones and graveyards looks like this. And they start looking like this about mid to late 1600s. When you look at these spaces, and we're looking here at South, which was 1752, when you look at these spaces, know that they have absolutely changed over time. So these spaces are typically in the middle of town. As we put in roads where there were no roads before, or we widen existing roads, it affects this space. Sanitation will affect this space. Building new buildings will eat into this space. And sometimes just general aesthetics over different decades, people will come in and say, this is messy, we got to clean this up. So all of that has an effect on this space, and we know it because it leaves us a visual cue on the landscape. I got nice, neat rows here. Everybody's pretty organized. So that's a visual cue for you when you walk in these spaces, that they have indeed changed over time. Gravestones have parts, just like anybody else, just like anything else. So I've got, in both of these, they're the same. I've got a shoulder here, where the art is contained is called the tympanum, and I've got another shoulder here. And then below the art, I'm going to have the biographical information. You've got a rich carving history out here in the Western Mass area and throughout into the Connecticut River Valley. This is a family called Sykes that worked for multiple generations, and they have a very specific style. So you'll see a lot of their work on your tombstones. Sometimes they get pretty crazy and make really beautiful tympani, like these two. I hate to let them go by without sharing them with you. They're exactly the same, a shoulder, the tympanum, and the shoulder. We've just got some artistic variant on them. Tombstones originally came in pairs. So you had a headstone and you had a footstone. So I'm going to say this a couple of times as we go through the colonial period. Folks of the time, very religious, very superstitious, and they're really following the Bible to the letter. They're spending all their time just trying to survive and get through every day. So even the stones themselves, when they're put in these burying grounds, they have purpose and they have meaning. So we call them headstones and footstones, but they were also called New England bedboards. So the idea of your bed for eternity. And the original idea was you bury father and he's 6 feet tall. There's a 6-foot spread between his headstone and his footstone. And you bury mother next to him and she's 5 feet tall. There's a 5-foot spread between her headstone and footstone. So as you look down the row, even as we go off the corner of the photo, we can take that idea, apply it to the picture, and assume that everybody was the same height. You're all looking at me like, no, that's not right. And you're right, it's not right. What this is a visual cue for you that this landscape has indeed been changed over time. Isn't that about the right amount of space for the lawnmower to get through? Right? So sometimes those footstones get pushed out and make their own row. Sometimes they get tucked up behind their parent stones. And if we're not so lucky, off they go. We find tombstones, both headstones and footstones, in many different locations other than the graveyard over time. The way you know a footstone is that the footstone's going to have something in common with its parent stone directly in front of it. So if this is my tombstone and it says my name, Brenda P. Sullivan, then the footstone here will have my name or my initials. So you know that the two go together. If the little one behind the big one doesn't match, it's another visual cue for you that this space has indeed been changed over time. Even the way you're buried in the graveyard, and again, this is the last quarter of the 1600s and well into the 1700s, even the way you're buried in the ground is important. It has meaning. So again, religious, superstitious, really following the Bible to the letter. So the way you needed to be buried was this fancy term, east-west axis orientation. And all it really means is which cardinal direction are you oriented to? So what we're looking at here is the back side of the stones. West is over here. East is over there. And the headstone, the writing faces west. The body is here, behind the headstone. And the idea was, on Judgment Day, the Archangel Gabriel is going to come from the east, sounding his trumpet, calling to resurrection and Judgment Day, and all the dead are going to sit up in their graves facing east to meet their Maker and be judged. This is an important call. You do not want to miss this call. So if you're not oriented, if you're not buried the right way in the ground, maybe you don't hear the sound of the trumpet. Maybe you hear the sound of the trumpet and you sit up and you're facing the wrong way and you're like, where is everybody? And this is too important to be left behind. Remember, they're spending all their time just trying to survive, and all the deeds and acts that they do every minute of every day counts towards whether they get their resurrection and eternal life in the next world, or if they go somewhere a bit warmer. Colonial gravestone symbols a Christian-based iconography and ideology. It is about the care and feeding of the immortal soul. You have one soul, and it's your job by the actions that you do while you're immortal that count for or against its ultimate salvation, and again, heading up or heading down. So early on, they put symbols on the stones to show that this is a message from the dead to the living about how you behave while you're here. Because the dead people are in there with those symbols on their stones, and saying, I was once mortal, you are too, and as you walk by my stone, know that you're next. So we put pictures on the stones, or because this was a long time ago, again, last quarter of the 1600s and into the 1700s. They put images on the stones to quickly convey, again, another visual cue, to quickly convey that idea about mortality and morality. It's a visual cue to get you to check your behavior, to get out of the details of your everyday and check your behavior to make sure that you're working for the good of that immortal soul. So early on, they put skulls and other body bones, other body parts, on tombstones. So this winged skull is called a death head. It is one of the first commonly used symbols on colonial New England tombstones. And it is the idea that when you die, all that's left of your mortality is your bones. And remember, one more time, religious, superstitious, following the Bible to the letter. So in that Orthodox interpretation of the Bible, to carve something into stone that looked human to give the idea of being human. If it looked human or angelic, it would have been considered a graven image and would have been sacrilegious. So we put a very literal image on the stone by using the winged skull, by using that death's head. And as we come into the 1720s and 30s, we've been settled in this part of the New World for 50, 70 or so years. We're really putting our towns together. And there's a group of religious leaders that say, it's called the Great Awakening in the 1720s and 30s. And there's a group of religious leaders that say, hey, you're not doing enough work. You're not working hard enough. You're not stringent in your followings. You're not working for the good of that immortal soul. And there's another part of people that are like, yeah, we're doing fine. And we're doing our best, and our maker will judge us accordingly. So what happens is that winged skull is allowed to grow some skin and look angelic or look human now without running the risk of being considered a graven image. It means exactly the same thing. It's just the more modern symbol for the time. And you can't say, once we get into the 1720s and 30s, you never see winged skulls again. That's just not how it works. You're going to get winged skulls across the 1700s. You're also going to get winged souls before 1720. You don't always get a tombstone the minute you die, if you get one at all. Whenever you get it, whoever is picking it might be more familiar with a certain symbol, in a more modern symbol or an older symbol. And also, tombstone cutters aren't just sitting around waiting for you to show up to say, hey, make me a gravestone. They will carve a blank like that, and it'll be there for sale, just like walking into a monument dealer or any other type of retail place today. So you would pay the price for the stone based on what you could afford. You're like, okay, well, not wild about the symbol, but that one's on sale. So yeah, great, we'll take it. And then you pay for the lettering. And what research has shown is lettering usually costs about 3 to 5 cents, maybe even as much as 8 cents per letter. There's some handsomes. Aren't they lovely? There's but a few I find when I'm out and about in graveyards all around the New England area. You don't have any here, or I shouldn't say that. I didn't find any here, but that means a couple things. It means maybe I didn't see them. Maybe they're covered with biological growth and I missed it. Maybe they were there and they've gone missing over time because you spend a couple 100 years outdoors, see how you do. Mm-hmm. And also, you're founded from you're really firmly established in 1761, 62. So certainly a lot of this kind of iconography has gone by. Some other winged souls. Now these you got. These I found here in town. And they're in keeping with the time period. All sorts of lovely variants, all sorts of beautiful faces. Don't let anybody tell you that this is what the occupant in the grave looks like. Uncle George always had those sleepy eyes, so yeah, that's what we put on his tombstone. That's not how that works either. Carvers carved in particular styles. They might have carved that way their whole careers. They have apprentices that work for them, that learn things and go off and do their styles. Everybody copies each other. Some people evolve their carving styles over time. This is not about the individuals. This is about the bigger question and the bigger idea about being human, being that winged soul. I can't be out in this part of the state without showing you these either. These are here in town. Your souls don't always have to have wings to show the idea of being human. And these are but a few variants of what I found out in town. I always use this guy on May 4th. I think he looks like Darth Vader, for the May the 4th be with you. I think I'm funny. But again, not meant to look like the individual, meant to be the idea of being human. There are other symbols on these stones as well, not just these soul symbols. We have got a sun here, and a very idea of a sun here. The idea, they're on the horizon. So it's the message that the sun sets on this life, but also the promise that it will rise on the next life as well. The idea that there's something more after this. I've got a beautiful hourglass here and here. It actually runs right down the border on both sides of the stone. And I've got another eroded hourglass here. And every human was born with an hourglass. You have a certain amount of sand. That sand started running the minute you showed up. And that glass continues to run every day that you're here. But that last grain of sand is going to fall at some point in time. You just don't know when. And you are to be prepared for that by virtue of your good behavior. Stars are guiding lights. They're the first things to come out in the night sky. The last thing to go in as the new day breaks. They're also really easy to carve. They make great space fillers as well. This is a lovely, and all of these are from here in town. We have a beautiful heart right here. This is a footstone. The heart was considered the seat of the soul. We get Latin on tombstones as well. Memento mori. Think on death. Remember your mortality. Don't forget you're gonna die, because in case we haven't been telling you this with all the other symbols, all these other tombstones, we're gonna do it in Latin. Latin is the language of early Christianity. We're gonna do it in English for the folks that can read and write, and we're gonna do it in pictures for the folks that can't read and write. This beautiful stone is off in Connecticut. And it's got a Latin phrase across the top, and that's great. But even in the 21st century, I don't need to know how to read Latin to understand the message on that 18th century tombstone. This is a tree. You're the tree. Human lives are like trees. They have a definite beginning. They have a definite end. That life is fragile and can be interrupted and ended at any time. So you're the tree. You got up today, you thought you were going to have a normal day. Going about your business, doing whatever it is you got to get done. The clouds roll in. Your maker comes out of the clouds with his hatchet and he fells your tree. Hope you were ready. You knew it was coming. It's inevitable, it's inescapable. But it could be at any moment. So you're to do the work again. The message, it goes on and over and over and over. You're to do the good work because everything you do, it's a climate where everything you do, every small thing counts either for or against the positive, hopefully, the positive judgment of that immortal soul and your entrance into the next world. But don't worry, death is not a permanent condition. Lightly scribed across the top of that stone reads, "The grave is God's hiding place." It's kind of like God's waiting room. Kind of hanging around between this life and the next, because we're waiting for something very important. This is what we're waiting for. We're waiting for Judgment Day, the call of Gabriel's trumpet for everybody to sit up and be judged, hopefully be redeemed of your sins, and hopefully ascending to the land of ice cream and unicorns for eternity. Death and resurrection on Judgment Day is the sudden and transformative nature of resurrection from earthly to, hopefully, heavenly existence. If you had repented because you were a sinner, this world was hard, it was full of temptation, it was full of sin, and how you held up under all those trials and tribulations counted for or against the ultimate destination. Life is short, but eternity is forever. You want to spend it in the land of ice cream and unicorns. You don't want to spend it in a place where it's very hot and very unpleasant. And I absolutely had to use these guys. This is a double stone over at Lakeville. And the tympanum on this first part is a single stone with a double tympanum. And it says, "In hopes of eternal glory." We're dead, we're in the ground, and we're hoping that we're going to, on Judgment Day, that we're going to make the cut and head off to the next world. As we come to the end of the 1700s, there's a lot of stuff going on. And the biggest thing that happens is we have a revolution. We tell the king across the pond, "Hey, it's been great, but we gotta go." And we separate and begin to start this new nation. So the founding fathers are putting their heads together, and they are talking about what kind of ideology are we going to use to say who we are as this new nation. Well, they look back at the very ancient and the very successful civilizations of the Greeks and the Romans, who were the founders of the concepts of democracy and the republic, the idea of the people having a say in their own governing. And while those founding fathers are doing all that real-time while they're doing all that pontificating, there's real-time archaeology going on. Greece is being excavated, Italy is being excavated. So in Italy, places like Pompeii and Herculaneum are coming to light for the first time. Napoleon is in Egypt. There's excavations going on all across the European continent. And these ancient civilizations are coming out of the ground and being seen by the modern people of the late 17 and early 1800s for the first time. And in the land of the living, it sparks the imagination of a population. It's something new. It's something we want to aspire to. So in the land of the living, it affects our architecture. It affects our furniture, our style of dress, and certainly it'll have a hand in the land of the dead as well. And one of the objects that's coming out of the ground from those excavations that ends up on tombstones in colonial New England burying grounds, because there's still graveyards and burying grounds, they're not cemeteries yet, is the cinerary urn. Cremation has been practiced for thousands of years. You need a vessel for the bodily remains, for those mortal remains. So while we're using all this classicism in the modern world, in the land of the living, why wouldn't we put it on stones for the modern time? So we use the urn like that, the cinerary urn, and we also use trees. Very specific trees. These are weeping willows. So by virtue of their name and the way they look, they are a perfect modern symbol of the time for sorrow and mourning. And we already had that conversation about how trees are like human lives, right? Fragile and can be interrupted at any time. So as you traverse these 19th century tombstones, you will see urns by themselves, you'll see trees by themselves, and you very often will see them together as well. So I've got the tree for something living and the urn for something dead, a beginning and an end. This looks different, doesn't it? This is Mount Auburn Cemetery. So cemetery is also taking its cues from classicism. Cemetery comes from a Greek word that means sleeping place or dormitory. It reflects the modern idea about how we die. No more hatchets coming out of the sky, no more food for worms. We are passing away, we're falling asleep, we're going to the summerland, we're going home. Mount Auburn was established in 1831 by the Massachusetts Horticultural Society in Cambridge. At the beginning, it was about 75 acres. It's now about 175 acres and spans Cambridge and Watertown. It seems weird that the Horticultural Society would be making a graveyard, doesn't it? So they're doing a couple of things. In establishing a burying space, they're taking their cues from places like the Père Lachaise Cemetery in Paris, that is open green space, is very walkable, it's almost like an art museum. They're also taking their cues from the English garden movement that's coming to us across the pond from England. And the idea of the English garden movement was about intentional planting. We are very much planting landscapes, we're planting plantings that work for beautification, plantings that work together. So those two things come together to make this space. So they're also taking their cues from the spiritualists and the transcendentalists that are having their seances and their Ouija boards, staying in touch or getting in touch with the spirits, because the folks of the 19th century believed that the dead weren't very far away. To die is just to leave the room. To die is to walk through the door and just be a door separation away. They're using this space, or they're making the space look like this also from literature. There are people out there writing about communing with nature, preserving. Thoreau is literally writing about preserving nature. All of these things are coming together in this new space because we're moving from being an agrarian country to being an industrialized nation. We're leaving the farms, we're moving into the cities, working in the factories, and the mechanizations of those factories are making life a little bit easier. We're not spending all our time just trying to survive, so we can focus on other things. When the Horticultural Society starts the cemetery for the dead, they're also doing it because it's a test arboretum at the time and continues to be an arboretum today. This looks completely different, and it's intentionally meant to be a departure from the colonial graveyards that we've been looking at. Green grass, rolling hills, pathways to walk, the monuments of different shapes and different sizes, everything about the places we're going to put our dead in these newfangled cemeteries are going to be modern, just like the people of the modern, the land of the living, the people of the modern time. When Mount Auburn opens, it's a tourist attraction exactly the same way it is today, because it is open green space 4 miles outside of downtown, dirty, industrialized 19th century Boston. And when Mount Auburn starts, this cemetery concept catches fire. Here's Mount Hope here in town. This is one of my favorite pictures. I'd been out here in the spring. Look at those beautiful trees amongst the tombstones. Everything is different about this space than it was for the colonial folks. In these newfangled cemeteries, you have the opportunity for the first time to purchase a family plot. Any one of these three are good examples of a family plot. So you can have organization in the colonial burial grounds, where you can bury your people together. But here in the new cemeteries, you have the opportunity to purchase a piece of land. I call it a home away from home. I call it a vacation home. And it sounds silly, but it's true. In the land of the living, the family all lived together. And one by one, as they passed away, they'd go to the family plot, and eventually the family would all be brought back together. And we may put something down that says this is our foundation, this is our land, our property. So we may put something like a fence. We might put curbing down like this to enclose the four sides. I've got stairs here. I've got a front door. You walk up the stairs, you walk through the front door, just like you would in your home in the land of the living. And in the cemeteries, if you have a family plot, and they have a family plot, and there's another back there, and there's another back there, and there's some more over here, now all of a sudden I have a neighborhood. These newfangled cemeteries of the 19th century are very social spaces. Families are in here all the time. They are, they're planting flowers, they're tending the graves, they are picnicking, they're communing with spirits, they're communing with nature, and they're communing with each other, they're visiting with each other, because their living neighbors are in these spaces caring for their deceased loved ones as well. Much softer symbols. Again, no hatchets, no worms, no bones. That is barbaric. That is not who we are as modern people of the 19th century. So we're going to go through these, and this is the part where I talk about marble being the new material. But symbolically, let's start there. That blurb up there, I know you're not going to believe me, but that's a lamb. I know you're not going to believe me, but that's a dove in front of a cross. I know you're not going to believe me, but that's someone laying down. These are some of my favorites. I call them sleepers because that's what they're doing. They're laying in their beds and they're sleeping. Can you get at least a slight idea of these shapes as we look at those pictures? They are soft symbols. The lamb is often, for children, childhood mortality very high right through the end of the 1800s. The idea of the innocence and purity of the lamb, and therefore the innocence and purity of the child, the Lamb of God. I've got a deceased dove here. Doves were a symbol of the soul. They're a symbol of the Holy Spirit. And again, there's my sleeper. Can you see? He's actually in pretty good shape considering. I've got two legs here. Here's the torso. And I've got one arm tucked up and one arm resting under the head. The idea of falling asleep and passing away. Again, no hatchets. The angels come and carry you from your bed and guide you across. And I've got another lovely dove over here for a little girl named Nellie. And on the back of the stone, it said, our dove had eyes of baby blue. So very soft messages, a lot of sentimentality. In these newfangled cemeteries, marble is the newly available material. It's the material of choice because it is white and bright. It's symbolic of purity in heaven. It glows on the landscape. And it's newly available because we have waterways and railroads where we can get material from farther away. You guys have a little bit of an advantage because you're a little closer to Vermont than I am in central Mass, and certainly the folks in eastern Mass. So you had access to marble a little earlier than we see it on the landscapes as you move across Massachusetts. But it catches on as the material of choice in the 19th century for all of those reasons. And the problem with marble is, and they didn't realize this at the time apparently, the problem with marble, it's very granular. So it is very susceptible to wind and water erosion, which is why you may not believe me that that's a lamb or a dove, or may find it hard to see the sleeper here. Marble is also very porous, so when it rains, the pollutants in the atmosphere the acid in the rain is going to have a chemical effect of the calcium carbonate in the marble and cause it to go dark like this. The good news is these can be cleaned. They can be made pretty white again. Don't do it if you don't know what you're doing. But it's not rocket science. It's not rocket science, and it's very easy to learn. So they can be made white again, but once they eroded away, once we've lost the definition in the carving, that you can't get back. I want you to remember this one and this one as we go on. We talked about the trees being like human lives. Oh, we've got flowers, because flowers are like human lives as well. There's a whole language of flowers through the 19th century. And it is the idea of the bloom. The flower that buds, the bud that blooms, and then the bloom that fades. That's a whole cycle, just like a human life. If I've got an image like this on the stone with a bud, that little droop, that unopened bud, and that break, and that drooping head, again, usually for young children and small children and young women, the idea of the flower that starts with a bud, but the bud that never gets to bloom, the idea of the life being nipped in the bud. And we certainly see other nods to nature on the stones as well. Oak leaves, typically on men's tombstones. Man is the mighty oak of the family. Sometimes we even see acorns on them, or little acorn caps, the idea of progeny. And we often see ivy on stones, tombstones for women, the symbol of motherhood and the idea of the protection of the vine. Some other softer symbols that I found that I wanted you to know. The anchor is a symbol of hope. We talked about the hourglass. Here's a more modern hourglass of the time. That's on a 19th century stone. And the idea with the scythe or the sickle there. The idea that the glass runs out and you shall be reaped. I've got a chain here. The family is a chain. And each person in the chain is a link. And when someone dies, that link is broken. But the idea that over time, as they die, and you all come back together, the chain gets put back together. And this is another example of erosion. It's certainly not very sharp. We've got the dark on it from the pollution and the acid rain. But it probably said, you can see there's a little bit of writing, you can still see here. It probably said parted below, reunited above. The idea that the chain gets put back together. I get books on tombstones. This might be the Holy Bible, and maybe it says across the face of it, Holy Bible. Maybe it's the idea of being recorded in the book of life, and maybe I see your initials or your name written here. And we see wreaths as well. Wreaths are symbolic of victory, as well as they also are often circles. So no beginning, no end. If you're looking for me, this is where I'm going. Everyone always laughs when I do that. It's like, you know me. It's all right. All my friends are going somewhere really warm too. We'll all be together. It'll be a great party. That pointing finger, that finger pointing up like that, is the same as the winged skull that we saw from the colonial period. It's just the more modern symbol of the time, right? It points the way to the next world. It promises that there's something more after this. And certainly shaking hands will do that as well. Goodbye in this life, hello in the next life, being reunited again. And when you see shaking hands on tombstones, I want you to look a little closer at them. And maybe I've got a feminine hand and a more masculine hand clasping. And maybe that feminine hand has a feminine dress cuff on it. And maybe that masculine hand has a shirt cuff on it. And maybe even with a cufflink. So I've got a male hand and a female hand shaking hands, which is a symbol of matrimony. So look at the tombstone and see, do I have a stone for a married couple? Do I have a married couple next to each other in the graveyard? In the cemetery. I told you to look at the symbols, the orientation, the geology, all and on and on and on and on and on, and all of that is true. But I don't want you to forget to look down. So way down here on the bottom of the stone, below what would be at grade, I've got a signature. So very few colonial New England tombstones are signed. Never say never, I've seen a few of them, but they are very few and far between. And at the time of thinking it was, there's one maker and you ain't it. So to put something to carve your name on something as a creator was sacrilegious. Nonetheless, I've seen it done. But when you get to the 19th century like this, it's pretty common to put a maker's mark on a tombstone. So now it's more like an advertisement or a calling card. As you go through the cemetery, visiting the dead and looking at everybody else's tombstones, wandering, communing with nature and the spirits and all that, you're like, hey, I really like the shape of that. I like that writing. I like the carving. Oh, look. Doherty and Woods were the maker of that. Oh, yeah, I've heard of them. They're in town, or they're in the next town. I'll go look and see what they have. Perhaps I'll get a tombstone for myself. So it's good advertising. I need you to know about these because I found them here in town. I found them in Mount Hope and Hillcrest. So I've got one here. I've got two headstones with it, head markers. This is the side view of a second one, and this is a panel from that big one over here. Remember, we talked about that before, being shepherded across the water to the next world. These are called white bronze. They are made by the Monumental Bronze Company in Bridgeport, Connecticut from about the mid-1800s to about the 19-teens. They are neither white nor are they bronze. I'm a business student, business graduate among other things. The term white bronze is brilliant marketing. Monumental Bronze Company forms at the time to be in direct competition with stone monument makers. And they're going to use science and technology to make something new on the landscape, affordable, highly customizable. That you can't do all kinds of things you can't do with stone. So they called it white bronze. Well, they're capitalizing on the name recognition and the cachet of the word bronze. Bronze is showing up on the 19th century landscape. And it's there in doors and plaques and urns and vases and statuary. And it's a visual cue on the landscape. Hey, we got some money. We're classy. We got something new on the landscape, on our cemetery lot. The problem with bronze is that it oxidizes very quickly between air and water. So it goes from that beautiful bronze color to being black and green and white and streaky. So it needs maintenance in order to continue looking good. Monumental Bronze Company says, well, our white bronze needs no maintenance. It's going to look as good on the landscape in 100 years as it does the first day it's put out there. So I said it's neither white nor is it bronze. It's kind of this blue-gray, not white. And it's not bronze, but zinc, almost 100% pure zinc. That's why we affectionately call them zinkies. Zinc is a natural biocide, so it doesn't grow anything. It doesn't grow any algae or lichen or moss. It doesn't have any copper content, so it isn't going to oxidize like bronze. It doesn't have any iron content. It's not going to rust. So it needs no maintenance. So it's got a leg up on bronze already. It's very price competitive with stone. It's cheaper than bronze. It's brand new on the landscape, and it's highly customizable. So you have no showrooms to go to. You can't go to the store and buy these. You become aware of them by seeing them on the landscape, and also by people with design books traveling basically door to door or in different friends groups selling the Monumental Bronze Company. So their design books, you could pick anything you wanted. I want it this big. I want an urn on the top. I want it to say this. I want a sheath of wheat. I want a boat. I want an angel. I want it all. You can have it. You can pick it all up, and they will assemble it for you. The zinc is molten at the foundry, poured into molds, and then the molded pieces are assembled and installed on the landscape. And even once it's on the landscape, you can still change it. It's still customizable. These panels here, can you see the little bolt covers, the little nut covers there? Those panels can come out like this. Again, we're looking at the side of this, so this is molded. It would have had these kind of plaques on either side. So let's focus on the big one. Some of these panels will have all your information. They're molded just like everything else. And then if you don't have enough typeset molded, data information to put on here, you can put ornamental panels. So maybe later you need to add something. You need to add somebody. Or maybe you need to take somebody off. You can remove these panels and have new ones made. So even after it's on the landscape, it is still very customizable, it's price competitive, and it's very new on the landscape as well. When you see these, and now that you know what they look like, you cannot unsee this. So as you're driving by any cemetery, including Mount Hope and Hillcrest, where I found these, they are sticking out on the landscape. They are a dot of blue way a mile down the road in the corner of the graveyard. They're easy to spot, if they're big enough, of course. So when you find one, go over and visit. Knock on it. If someone answers, run. But more likely what's going to happen is it's going to return a hollow metallic sound. Metallic because it's made out of zinc. Hollow because there is no internal armature here. It's the four sides, all the panels put together. There's nothing holding it together on the inside. Monumental Bronze continues making monuments until the 19-teens, when the material and the foundry space are needed for the First World War effort. This looks really different, doesn't it? So period 3, we are firmly in the 20th and the 21st century when we look at landscapes like this. So before I forget, next couple of slides, you may see somebody you know. Don't forget. I tell everybody that because I didn't used to give the warning, and then somebody knew somebody that came up on the screen, and we all freaked out. So, just a heads up. These spaces look very different for any number of reasons. And in no particular order, it looks like this because as we come out of the 1800s and into the 1900s, first there's the aesthetic movement where there's a backlash against the machines and the inhumanity, the non-humanness of the machines that the mechanizations of the factories gave us, take the personality out because we replace it with machines. So we want to reclaim that. Queen Victoria dies in 1901, and shortly after that, within the next decade, we get the arts and crafts movement from England. And it's the idea of simplifying. So we want in the land of the living, we simplify our architecture, our furniture, our style of dress, and we want to simplify the landscape in the land of the dead. So we want to return it to a more pastoral look, not so busy and frenetic like it has been. Modern landscaping is going to affect this space We have a certain amount of manpower and money, and we have to keep this space looking good. We have newly available material in granite. Almost all of these here are granite. You see your old 19th century stuff just over the wall in marble. And we have granite as a newly available material because coming out of the Industrial Revolution, we have pneumatic tools that allow us to get this very hard material that's formed at the molten core of the earth. We're able to get it out of the ground and work it, not just for big buildings and impressive monuments, but for more everyday applications as well, such as tombstones. There's an ideology shift here as well. So, a couple of things. As the result of the Civil War, we start embalming. So people are dying at home, you're sick at home, you die at home. Your family takes care of the body, washes it, dresses it. The wake is in the home, maybe the funeral is also in the home. And then when we have embalming, now maybe the traveling embalmer is going to come and embalm the body and make you look as good as possible, make you look like you've just fallen asleep. And over time, we move from being sick, we move out of the house into institutions, hospitals, sanatoriums, care facilities, other types of care facilities. And we give the end of life to somebody else in the medical sense. We give the end of life to the funeral parlor to have them do what we used to do in terms of caring for and preparing and waking and having a funeral for our beloved deceased. So it takes that experience of death out of the everyday goings on, the everyday experience of the folks that saw it before. One other thing that really happens that makes a huge impact is that modern medicine itself, before it even becomes modern medicine becomes a big thing. As we are leaving the 1800s, we've started to understand about the wee beasties, the invisible things that make us sick that we didn't know about. We start to learn about germs and bacteria. We learn about how disease is communicated between people, how disease is passed. We learn we need to keep our water clean. We have started understanding about things like penicillin. Penicillin is being discovered, X-ray is being discovered. And then as we cruise through at a very rapid pace, and we cruise through the 1900s, medicine moves at an incredible pace that allows us to cheat death on a regular basis. You only have to go back maybe 70 years. 1950s, 1960s, open heart surgery, and then subsequently organ transplants. And nowadays, no big deal, right? You need a hip, you need a knee, we'll make you one out of stainless steel. You need a kidney, I can give you one. If you wait just a little longer, they're going to give you pig parts. If you wait a little longer still, they're just going to print you new parts. They're going to grow them in a lab dish. And they know how crazy that sounds, but think how crazy swapping organs out was when it was first done. That test tube baby that was such a miracle in the 1970s, she's over 50 now. And it's not a miracle, it's in vitro fertilization. We do it all the time. Not ready to have a baby? No problem. We'll harvest your eggs, we'll freeze them over here. When you're ready, they'll be waiting for you. We've mapped our human genome. We understand and learn more and more, faster and faster about how we work, how our bodies work. It's science, it's not superstition, it's not religion, the way it was for the colonials and even for the folks of the 19th century. It's science that says this is how we get sick and why we get sick. So all of that has come together to allow us to cheat death, and it keeps us out of these places. We keep from experiencing it the way the folks that came before us did. So when I walk in these spaces, I don't get to meet a lot of people. We've got tombstones that on the front might have the surname, and on the back, I've got the names of the people, and maybe I got a birth year and a death year, and that's about it. But the good news is, and I put it to around the 1980s, we as modern people of the time decided that we wanted to take the conversation back. We wanted to talk about who we were and what we enjoyed while we were here. We leave a piece of visual legacy on the stone. So now I can see your faces. That's called a photo ceramic. You guys remember developing film, right? Photomat, all that fun stuff. You develop photos with an emulsion process that puts the picture on the paper. You make photo ceramics very much the same way. It's an emulsion process on a piece of ceramic, and the ceramic is sealed and then attached to the tombstone. So I can see your faces. I told you to remember this one. There's my milky lamb. Do you see that? Mm-hmm. There was a photo there. So the idea of putting photos on tombstones is not a new idea. Photography is invented in 1839, and just like our cell phones, it goes from being newfangled and expensive and nobody has it to it evolves very quickly and everybody has access to it. So whether you have a lot of money and can afford the early photography, or little money, later on when you can have tintypes, you can put pictures on the tombstone. And really, with a lamp, this is a tombstone for a child. And it would be a very 19th century thing to have that new technology of photography, to have a photo of that child put on the tombstone. We saw the symbol before, now we see it in the modern time as well. We're holding hands. This is a symbol of matrimony. It's a symbol of our eternal love. I see where you live. You're proud of your homes. You love your homes. You love your pets. I see your pets everywhere. I see your pets on your tombstones all the time. They're just as much a member of the family as the two-legged ones that we share the household with. I see that you love the outdoors. Maybe you go and watch the animals. Maybe I've got someone that hunted and provided for their family out of the forest. And we sure did love the open road and the open wind on our motorcycles as I ride. And our hot rods, of course, and our cows. So this is an etching. So in the 1980s, black granite became available as a tombstone material. And by virtue of its name, it's black. It's a jet black. It takes a high polish. It's very slick on the landscape. And because of that, it really lends itself to getting pictures put on it. So very talented people with diamond-tipped tools are etching images into the stones. And maybe sometimes we go even farther and we color it. We colorize it. So we go from a black and white movie to a color movie. I want you to know about this because I found this here in town. This is part of Salt Cemetery. This is called the Lawn Cemetery. And it is the idea that all the stones are flat. It is the idea, the epitome of the idea of making it a more pastoral landscape, easier on the eye. I wanted you to know about this too. This is the Belcher State School. So state school is euphemism for correctional institution for kids. Might also have been a mental health institution. Started in 1925, when many times when people die in those kind of institutions, there's a graveyard, there's a cemetery on the property. And for any number of reasons, those cemeteries can be neglected and overgrown. And what happened was this one had been overgrown, and a former patient, and he was in there, and his mother was in there as well. I can't remember, I think he was born there, I don't really remember. Came in, saw what a mess, how overgrown everything was, cleaned it up, rededicated it in 1980. turned it into Pine Grove in 1987 and cleaned up and rededicated as the Warner Pine Grove Cemetery in 1998. So there's Mr. Warner and his wife. That was his mother, Anne. So people in these institutions, when they died, got put in cemeteries, they very often got a number. They more than likely got a number. They didn't get a stone that had their name on it. And it had a lot to do with, at the time, there was a lot of stigma around being institutionalized. We didn't talk about mental health. It was a very closeted, and there's a lot of stigma to it. And the state has and continues to have a fiduciary relationship or fiduciary duty to the people that die in these institutions or are buried in cemeteries to protect their privacy. So they're buried in these cemeteries and they get a number. So what's happened over time, because the stigma has lifted on being institutionalized and these spaces are being reclaimed, cleaned up and reclaimed and renamed and recognized again, many of the places will get their numbers removed. People will do research, which is what I believe Mr. Warner did, do research who everybody was, and everybody got a gravestone with their name and their dates on it. I see this at a lot of state institutions. So I wanted you to know about it because it's quite the story. I'm winding this down. There's only one or two more slides after this, but before I start this, I want to give you a little disclaimer. Everything I'm going to talk about pretty much doesn't happen in cemeteries in New England, but I promise you it happens elsewhere. Beekeeping, good for the bees, good for the flowers, good for the cemetery. And they're selling the honey, and I can promise you it's all spoken for before it ever leaves the hive. Money goes right back to the cemetery. Gardening club. This is Woodland Cemetery in Philadelphia. This is called a cradle grave. It has nothing to do with children. It has everything to do with the idea it looks like a cradle. So I've got a stone here, another stone here, and it's got a three-sided box in front of the headstone. It's a Victorian artifact. It was used at the time in the 19th century for planting flowers. So Woodland Cemetery invited the local gardening club to come in and plant and maintain the 100 cradle graves they have in their cemetery. So now you're inviting the public in, they're helping you beautify the landscape, and it's of no cost to the cemetery. So it's public and private together. This is the one that makes everybody in the Northeast wring their hands. It's my friend Fido. Canine Corps. The Congressional Cemetery in Washington, D.C. has a program called Canine Corps, where you can, for a fee and a dedication of 8 hours of your time volunteering at the cemetery, you have an annual membership in the Canine Corps. And what the perks that come with membership is that on certain days, at certain times, you get an email that you can come in on certain days at certain times and bring your dog into the cemetery. And you can bring your dog into the cemetery and let him off leash so they can go frolic in the grass. You're all like, no, you can't do that. Yeah, you can. Yeah. And they're doing it. And the thing is, if you are not a good pet parent, pet is not doing what it's supposed to be doing, out you go. Membership revoked. See you later. Lose your deposit. It's like $250 a year. And they're not worried about booting you out because there's a 2 to 3 year waiting list to be part of the Canine Corps at Congressional Cemetery. And this means that Congressional Cemetery has answered the question, where do I find open green space to run my dog in downtown Washington, D.C.? Weddings and parties, dinner and a movie. Who doesn't want to go to a party in the cemetery? We just want to be invited. These things happen all the time. There are beautiful buildings in these spaces that can be used for something other than just funerals. They can be used for weddings, they can be used for parties, they can be used for dinner parties. And for this time of year, they do it year round, but if you want proof, look up Hollywood Forever Cemetery in Los Angeles, because right about now, on High Holy Week of Halloween, they show Night of the Living Dead in Hollywood Forever Cemetery. And they actually show movies there year round. And when you see pictures, there's blankets all over the place. Everybody wants to be invited in. Yoga, can you think of a more peaceful place to do yoga than the cemetery? 5K runs, stargazing, go in at night when you're not supposed to be there. They invite you in to come look at the night sky with an astronomer and a telescope. Book clubs and death cafes. The idea of strangers coming together to read a book in common and discuss it. Strangers coming together and talking about and having a support system of people with questions about death or have had losses to come and get together to share something that we all experience at one point or another. Cemetery swag and gift shops. I promise you the cemeteries have gift shops. You can find Gravestone Girls goods in any number of them around the country. You can get t-shirts, postcards, books, all kinds of great stuff, and then money goes to the cemetery. That's me. I'm shy, I think you figured that out. This is me in my 10 by 10 booth at the Market of the Macabre in Laurel Hill Cemetery in Philadelphia. Once a year, they invite 100 spooky vendors like me, spooky artists, to come in and set up. And they invite the public in for a fee to come in and shop and enjoy the cemetery. Laurel Hill does a tremendous amount of programming. They're a beautiful 19th century Victorian garden style cemetery. The Market of the Macabre happens one Saturday a year in September from the hours of 12 to 5. This year in September, because I've been there since the beginning, they had more than 6,000 people through the gate. At $5 to $10 a head. Do the math, right? It all goes to the cemetery. The vendors paid to be there, the food trucks paid to be there, the cocktail guy paid to be there. He got some of my money. The gift shop sold things and made money. The Friends group got new members. Money goes to the cemetery. They got donations, money thrown in the donation bin, and all that money for every program they do goes right back into the cemetery. It goes for maintenance, it goes for preservation work, and it goes for creating new programming to invite the public in. Technology, we're modern people, right? We got cell phones and computers and GPS, and our toasters talk to us, and our beds do crazy stuff when the internet goes out. There are places, cemeteries, are doing applications where you want to take a tour of Père Lachaise Cemetery from the comfort of your couch. Can't get to Paris this weekend? Go take a virtual tour. Local cemeteries, or really anywhere you travel to, so many cemeteries have mobile apps. Can't make it to the tour Saturday at 2 o'clock, you want to go Tuesday morning at 11 a.m.? You can. Download the app and do the tour at your own pace. You're not under the constraints of a particular time, a particular day, and moving to somebody else's pace. You can go as fast or as slow as you want and dig down into as much history as you'd like while you're there. During the pandemic, or before the pandemic, I had to explain what this was. You all know what that is, right? It's a QR code. It's a member of the UPC family. For here, it's been enlarged to show for your viewing pleasure. Down here, this is what it looks like. It's a memory medallion. It's made by the Memory Medallion Company in Pennsylvania that holds the U.S. patent for using QR technology for memorialization. So it's about an inch in diameter, it's stainless steel, and it's got a QR code etched on it. So what you do is you purchase your memory medallion from them, you have it installed on your tombstone, and then in the cemetery, people with smartphones and nosy Gravestone Girls come along and scan your QR code, and we're taken to your memory medallion website. 999 spaces to do anything you want with. Put your pictures, put your writings, put your achievements and awards, put your pictures of your pets. Genealogists, put your genealogy work there. It's yours to do what you want. When I scan this QR code on the Memory Medallion website, I am taking Mrs. Sarah Buchanan's Memory Medallion website. And we can learn a lot about her, all kinds of things to read and pictures to look at, really get an understanding of who she was as an individual. You know, one of the things we learn is that in life, she was known for her famous family caramel recipe. Apparently, she wants to keep the title in death. So there is a 14-minute video on her Memory Medallion website of her seated in the kitchen, directing her adult son around, showing us how to make the family caramel recipe. I know this sounds crazy to us New Englanders, but I promise you it's a thing. I gave this presentation to the New England Cemetery Association for their annual conference. I had 100 cemeterians in the room, and I said, show hands, show me, tell me how many of you have memory medallions in your cemetery. How many hands do you think I got? Not a one. Zip. They all make the same face as you did, like that's a thing, we can do that. But I promise you it is a thing, because Memory Medallion's been in business for almost 30 years. And this is actually their second generation technology. I have seen other companies trying to do this, putting video players on tombstones that runs like a 7-minute video in a constant loop, is solar powered, all that kind of stuff. And they've gone by the wayside, but Memory Medallion is keeping up with the technology and making it available, and people must be using it or they'd be out of business too. We're just not seeing it here in the Northeast. But it allows you to have a say from the afterlife. It's password protected. You don't have to leave your password when you die. Have at it, right? Modern technology. Modern technology for modern people. I warned you I could talk about this forever. And I hope that I have been able to convey the idea that these spaces are fun. They are living art museums. They're living history museums. They're free and open to the public. They span hundreds of years. We're particularly blessed that we're in this part of the country. We're one of the oldest parts, so we have a lot of examples. A lot of great fun can be had in these spaces. So they are interesting and educational. They're a valuable resource for everyone. And I always say get out there and explore. But it's almost 8:30. It's dark. It's cold. But they're going to be there tomorrow. So please do go out and explore. My thanks to the library, my thanks to the Friends for having me in tonight. If you didn't get your little postcards, I have a couple left. That's how you find us again. Shop the website, follow us on social media. I will take any burning questions that we might have. Otherwise, we're all free to go. Enjoy. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful night.